You're listening to Mind Over Markets, a podcast on trading psychology to help you build a bulletproof mindset. Here's your hosts, George Papazov and Mark Borscht.
Two different decision types that people make. So there's the first decision type is called the value-based decision. All right, this is made in the orbitofrontal cortex, or the OFC.
That's a big word.
It's a huge word. All right, so during those times when you're really comparing like a car purchase, for example, like if you're deciding between a Honda or a Subaru or a Mercedes or whatever it is, when you're shopping for a car, then what you're doing is making a value-based, it's a goal decision, right? You're trying to select something for the purpose of maximizing your value. All right, so in any situation where you're comparing two things, or you know that you have to get a coffee mug or a new pair of shoes or, I don't know, a hat because it's getting cold in the winter, when you know what you're purchasing, or if it's something that you need to get, you're doing value-based decisions because you're comparing, contrasting items, functionality, features, colors, material, comparing a whole bunch of stuff. So you're looking to maximize value.
Would this be something like buying gifts for your nieces?
This was totally a value-based decision. I was in the store and I didn't realize how many different varieties of toys they have. And then it's also categorized by like age group, right? And I like a lot of stuff for 10-year-olds. And then I realized, like, you're not buying this for yourself, George. I honestly almost bought a little fire truck for the office. I'm a kid at heart.
Oh,
So anyway, the second type of decision is a habit-based decision, which occurs in the basal ganglia, which is deep in the brain. All right, so when you pull your basically cereal off the shelf at the grocery store, if you're shopping around with your cart, right, that's a habit-based decision. Putting your shoes on, that's a habit-based decision. Waking up, that's a habit-based decision. Those things that, you know, are routine that you don't really need to think about. And what's really interesting is that the very first time that you've actually made the decision, you know, you probably thought about when you were young, like you were probably taught how to tie your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get it from the very first time. I bet you knotted it up and your mom had to kind of.
It was the bunny ears, I think, back in the day. You start with one ear. You wrap it around and you make the bunny ears. That's how I learned to start.
I feel like my mom just yelled at me till I got it. That was her strategy. But yeah, so like at the beginning, it didn't come that you weren't born with the ability to tie your shoes, but you learned it. And once you learned it, it became then a habit-based decision. So at one point, you know, it was a value-based decision. You have to decide what are different ways to tie the shoes. You know, who's going to teach me? But then it turns into a habit-based decision, and it goes just in the deep brain for recall. That's how you could make 35,000 decisions and not be drooling and be in constant thought for the whole day, all right? Because that's a lot of decisions to make. If you divide 35,000, Marky, by, let's say, 24 hours, all right? That's 1,458 decisions an hour. If you divide that by 60 minutes, that's 24 decisions a minute. And if you divide that by another 60, that's about 4/10 of a decision, or you make a decision almost every 2 seconds.
Wow.
Right? A lot of decisions. All those decisions are either value-based or habit-based. All right. But here's the interesting part is that the OFC, or the value-based part, is quiet when the habit brain part takes over. So if you're not making a value-based decision, then what your brain does is going back to executing habits. Think about this. It's like a program. So you program these habit patterns into your brain over decades, over years. All right. The ones that are the most important for your survival have been automated before you're probably even born. Right. So you have all these programs running in the back, and then a decision pops in the front, and you say to yourself, oh, well, you know, this is an important decision. I have to focus on this. So now your logical brain's working. And then once you do that a few times, that gets shuffled to the back of your brain. But when you're not making a logical decision, all right, the habit part of the brain takes over. Right. So just because you think you're making a decision, or you don't think you're making a decision, doesn't mean that you're not. The back of the brain. This is very important for trading and for life in general. So we're going to put up an illustration so you understand components of the brain and what we're talking about. But the deep inner animal brain for you, the survival brain that you've developed that you had initially, and then we built layers around it that we call logical mind, you know, that's a decision maker, and it's based on habit. All right, so let's talk about this. Here's a cool takeaway from this, is that if you give somebody a lot of information, then they'll switch from habit to goal directed.
That is interesting.
It's very interesting, because why is that? Because it's all new information, especially if that information is new, right? When there's a mass amount of information, you logically have to interpret what information you want to actually analyze, because how many bits do we process a second? 128.
Yeah, take a guess, guys. You should know.
Yeah, 128. That's the answer. And so if you're processing that little bits and there's a lot of information, you need your logical mind to make a decision, a goal-directed decision. All right. So what's the biggest challenge? Let's relate this to trading, Marky. What's the biggest challenge of new traders?
Biggest challenge of new traders, honestly, they don't really know what they're looking for, or really how to evaluate opportunities. You know, we find a lot of new traders come in looking for signals, and that likely is due to, you know, not really having a trading plan in place, not really knowing what they're looking for, not knowing how to evaluate opportunities, etc. So I think that's definitely one of the bigger challenges for newer traders. And then outside of that, probably risk management.
Absolutely. I think that the very first one, right, when you're first starting out, it's like not knowing what you need to know. There's just so much information. I just typed learn to trade in Google. And the first 4 things were ads, as always. Obviously trying to separate somebody from their money very quickly. But then as you go through, you know, one of the first ones that catches my attention is learn how to trade the market in 5 steps. And we're not going to mention websites and names, are obviously like, and then, you know, 5 steps. There's a lot more than that. And so at the beginning, as a new trader, think about this. What are you trying to do when you're faced with a decision? What's the goal of making a decision? To make the right decision in the least amount of time. To make the decision that benefits you the most in the least amount of time.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Would you agree?
I would, yeah, definitely agree with that.
So in trading terms, what is the decision you're trying to make? You know, knowing when to buy or when to sell that'll make you the most amount of money with the least amount of risk, so you can go do other stuff. And so here's where it gets really interesting, all right? Because when you're faced with a lot of new information as a new trader, you're assuming that your job as a new trader is to become very quickly become a good decision maker. And you're not really taking time to understand that to learn this information, there's processes, methods, you know, there's different application, different things you're looking for. So rather than asking what information do I need, you take any information and you start making decisions on it. Yeah. I would say that if a new trader just at the beginning said the next 6 months, my only goal is learning, right? Rather than earning. Mm-hmm. I would say that their success rate would be exponentially higher because they're not trying to make decisions. They're learning what information's there that's available for them to make decisions. Because here's where it gets really interesting, because what happens if you just take, for example, you go on Google, type what I typed in. What are you going to be faced with? Indicators, systems, strategies, guaranteed ways to make money. So now you're assuming that the information that you're being provided is the right information that you need. And you start making decisions based on somebody's information without even questioning it. What happens, Mark?
Not a good path. That's what happens.
Not a good path. You end up losing money, right? You will lose money if you're taking someone's information because you're making decisions for yourself based on other people's information. The most important job that you have is learning what information is important, how information affects the decision-making process, and only then are you evaluating yourself at how good you are to make decisions, right? You know why executives get paid millions of dollars in big companies? It's not because they're smarter than any of us. It's just they have so much experience they can make decisions quicker. They have more.
They have to make decisions. That's exactly it.
Exactly. And so for people right off the bat who want to try trading, who don't like to make decisions, you know, first of all, you have to understand this. You're very good at making decisions. You make 35,000 of them a day. So there's no person who doesn't make decisions. So you got to understand this is a decision-making business. This is why it's such an important podcast. So let me tell you now the whole premise of what I've been getting at. And then Mark's going to dive into a little bit deeper. When you start making decisions at the beginning, when you think that your goal is, where do I have to buy? When do I have to sell? Where do I get at? When you think that at the beginning as a trader, that's your most important task, you know, what ends up happening is you end up making the wrong decisions. And most importantly, you don't even know why you've made the wrong decision. So what ends up happening? You make the wrong decision because you don't know how to analyze information. You're taking one strategy, one system, one indicator that never works in all market conditions. So even the rare times that it does work a few times, it's not going to work for the long haul. So here's what happens. You take the information, you make the decision, you lose the trade, right? Now you have feedback. Your decision was wrong. The decision you made didn't work. You do it again. Yeah, you do it again. you lose money. You do it again, you lose more money. You do it again, you lose more money. Until one point, you no longer have to make the decision because now it becomes a habit. It's no longer a goal-based decision. Now it's a habit-based decision. Traders who have started and at the very beginning have made it their number one goal to evaluate their success based on money that they've made. If you start trading today and you're like, my goal is to make $500 a day in 3 weeks, those traders end up writing habits and patterns of self-destruction for their capital. Why? Because they didn't start by learning what information was right. They just started making decisions they thought were right, which led to loss.
Thanks for listening to the Mind Over Market podcast. You can find us at TradeProAcademy.com.